Stanton Friedman is the man largely responsible for the UFO craze of the last century. His reporting on Roswell is what kicked off the public obsession with the supposed alien conspiracy. His life's work was to prove that extraterrestrials really had visited us and that we are not alone. Harold Scarup is a retired military major and was a personal friend of Stanton Friedman. After Stanton died, Harold created an exhibit at the Fredericton Region Museum in his honor. Can you tell me a little bit about who Stanton Friedman was?
Stanton Friedman was a nuclear physicist whose primary love, if I could put it that way, was facts matter. Don't tell me a story and not show me the facts. You say there's a document that says the president was briefed. I believe it has to exist. If it isn't there, then it didn't happen. In fact, it's how he started off this whole thing. Believe it or not, he started off as a debunker. He said, UFOs, come on, can't be. No such thing. If there were an incident of a crash in New Mexico from another planet, the President of the United States would have been briefed about it. I'm going to go through the documents in the National Archives down there. I'm going to prove to you that no such thing happened. And guess what? Through his diligence and his care and his attention to detail, he found not one but several letters where President Truman was briefed about a strange crash in New Mexico that yielded a number of dead bodies, and they couldn't explain it. Then he started going through other records, and they discovered that 12 people had been appointed to investigate these things and to monitor it. He's looking at the names, and he said, good grief, I know 2 of these people. They couldn't possibly have been involved in something like this. Both at the time had passed. Stanton went over, he and his wife used to play cards with these 2 families. And he sat down and talked to the wife and he said, did our friend actually ever go to this place? And she says, yes, one night a couple of people turned up from the Air Force in a military car and they said, pack a bag, you'll be gone a week or 2. And he went out west at about the time the crash happened or was reported. He came back and refused to speak about it. And this just boggled Stanton's mind. He was confronted with facts that he didn't want to believe was real, and yet here were the signatures of 2 colleagues he'd worked alongside who'd been involved in the investigation of this. So he grabbed a couple of colleagues and he headed off to New Mexico to examine it. He and his colleagues interviewed more than 150 people to determine whether or not this was true. And enough of them convinced Stanton that this was a factual crash. Something from out there came here and crashed, and some of the people, those on board didn't survive it.
Joanna Ayton Kerr is the director at the Provincial Archives of New Brunswick. Before Stanton passed away, she agreed to take in all of his life's work for preservation. So how long do you think it will take you to process all of his material?
When we initially got the donation, I did some number crunching based on the volume of material, so roughly 3 cargo vans full. And I calculated that if 1, possibly 2 other archivists worked on it full time and did nothing else, it would take 10 to 15 years.
Is there any way to estimate how many first-hand accounts are in his materials?
When it comes to letters that were written, we have first-hand accounts that were written, and then we have letters written by people telling about somebody else's account. We will have a number eventually, but my estimate right now might be 6,000 or 7,000.
One of the major theories regarding Roswell has to do with the location's relationship to the testing of weapons of mass destruction and the possible interest other beings might have in human military capabilities.
What changed from thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of visits to this planet to observe, where all of a sudden they were actually crashing? They were here observing where they were testing nuclear weapons, where they were testing rockets, and they were testing high-frequency radars. Basically, if you were from there and you saw what we were doing to each other here and realized that we were reaching the point with nuclear weapons where we were going to be able to do some serious harm to anything and everyone beyond us, wouldn't you want to be tracking what's going on and keeping track of it? This is mostly what Stanton was about. He figures that they're here to keep an eye on us because we were getting dangerous to the point where we might be able to threaten them, and nobody wanted that.
So can you tell me about some of the more interesting objects in the collection?
There were a lot of interesting objects in the collection, and as we were going through the boxes and boxes, the archivists would sometimes make little squeals of delight as we found these sorts of things. We got lucky with this one, although we don't know who it came from or if Stanton purchased it or picked it up somewhere himself, but it says Roswell crash site soil. Is it? I don't know. There's no letter of authenticity. I don't know what the soil looks like in Roswell, but it's definitely a dry soil, so that's what that one is.
Code word used to describe 12 people who were appointed by President Truman to investigate UFOs and the crashes was called MAJIC, M-A-J-I-C. There were 12 people. There were admirals, serious members of state, you name it, physicists and so on. But they were highly qualified people who would have been granted an extremely high security clearance. Somebody managed to pass to him a microphoto film that had this information on it. And everybody has spent years trying to verify where did it come from, who gave it out. It existed. He believed it existed. He believed it was true. And if Stanton believed it was true, then you could take it to the bank that likely it was factual.
Why was Stanton Friedman so respected?
He wrote back to everyone who contacted him, did his best. The kind of person who would take the time to listen to you. If you're going to call him up in the middle of the night to say, I've just had a close encounter experience, I'm scared, what can you tell me about this? He would talk to you. So when you ask, what is it about Stanton Friedman that people respect? One, facts. Show me the facts, show me the documents. Don't just tell me a story, you need to back it up. I need something to verify what you're saying. And that built his reputation to the point where they understood, if Stanton Friedman listened to you and said the information was good, then it was probably good. And if he said it was kind of nonsensical, he probably had good reasons for that. And as such, he became the guru, if you will, the eminence grise, if you will, the person who everyone in the UFO community looked to for validation and verification. And he continued that business of sharing what he was about and listening to people and being the expert right up until he died about 2.5 years ago of a heart attack in Toronto. He was an extraordinary individual, and everybody who met him will confirm that to you.